Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India-US signed terms of reference for the first phase of a bilateral trade deal. In-person negotiations in May, deal by year-end. Hamas likely to respond to the Gaza truce proposal within 48 hours, rejects clauses that would force it to disarm, calling them a red line. Singapore to hold general elections on May the 3rd. Prime Minister Wong says the city-state is at a critical juncture amid global trade uncertainties. And India expected to experience above-average monsoon this year, says India's Met Department. El Niño conditions to remain neutral. India and the United States have signed the terms of reference for its first part of a bilateral trade deal. Both sides agreed in February to work on the first phase of a trade deal that will be concluded late this year with a view to reaching bilateral trade worth $500 billion by 2030. The two countries will start virtual discussions on the deal this month, with the next round of in-person talks scheduled for mid-May. So India's overall exports have showed steady growth in March 2025, with both exports and imports registering year-on-year increases. The total export, which combines merchandise and services, has increased to $73.61 billion in March this year, up from $71.71 billion in March last year. The growth reflects continued resilience in key sectors of the economy. The data shows a sharper increase on the import front, with overall imports climbing to $77.23 billion from $73.63 billion a year ago. A recent report by India's Niti Aayog titled Automotive Industry Powering India's Participation in Global Value Chains outlines India's global value chain potential in the automotive sector, highlighting strategic pathways for global leadership. India's automotive industry is a significant contributor to the nation's manufacturing and economic growth, accounting for 7.1% of the country's GDP and 49% of the manufacturing GDP. The industry ranks fourth globally in vehicle production and employs millions, supporting critical linkages across sectors like steel, electronics and IT. The global automotive component market was valued at $2 trillion in 2022, with $700 billion traded across borders. India's current share in globally traded auto components is around 3% or $20 billion, indicating substantial scope for expansion. The Vision 2030 roadmap aims to scale production to $145 billion, exports to $60 billion, and generate around 2 to 2.5 million jobs. Moving on, the United States is turning up the heat in its trade war, this time targeting two of the world's most crucial sectors, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. President Donald Trump is pushing forward with plans to slap new tariffs on imported medicine and chips, calling foreign dependence a national security risk.
Donald Trump's tariff saga refuses to cease. The rollercoaster ride has already got the global markets facing headwinds. Now the national security probes have been initiated on two products, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. The probes are a precursor for imposing tariffs on chips and drugs. Trump says he expects to impose tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals in the not-too-distant future.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
The Commerce Department has launched formal probes into both sectors. Commerce Secretary insists the move will bring manufacturing back home.
We need to have semiconductors, we need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon. You shouldn't think this is really outside of it. Really think of it as being included in the semiconductor space, much like pharmaceuticals.
But the move is already raising red flags. Drug makers warn it could lead to shortages and make medicines more expensive. Chip makers say that tariffs could disrupt production just as the world is racing to meet the tech demand. Markets had a mixed reaction to the development. Wall Street saw a modest rebound, with investors clinging to hopes that exemptions for some tech goods like smartphones and computers might soften the blow. But Trump has signaled those exemptions won't last forever. Meanwhile, efforts to strike trade deals with many partners are also gathering pace. Treasury Secretary Stock Bessent has hinted momentum in talks with individual countries on reaching trade deals, but offered little details. Talks have begun with Vietnam and were to start with Japan on Wednesday, then South Korea next week. These nations on their part have started their own efforts to counter the effects. The timeline or chances of any deal with China remains a question mark. Meanwhile, Taiwan's economy minister said on Tuesday that the island will simulate the impact of any US tariffs on the semiconductor industry. South Korea, which is home to chip giants like Samsung, announced an emergency $4.9 billion boost for its semiconductor industry to counter the fallout. South Korea's finance minister also said on Tuesday that Seoul will try to delay reciprocal tariffs as much as possible by negotiations with the United States. Back in America, a legal advocacy group on Monday asked the U.S. Court of International Trade to block Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing the president overstepped his authority. The lawsuit asks the court to block enforcement of the tariffs and declare Trump lacked the authority to impose them. The New York-based Court of International Trade is a U.S. federal court with broad jurisdiction over most trade-related matters. Bureau Report, DD India.
So as mentioned in the report, a legal advocacy group has asked the U.S. Court of International Trade to block President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing the president overstepped his authority. The lawsuit was filed by the non-partisan Liberty Justice Center on behalf of 5 small U.S. businesses that import goods from countries targeted by these tariffs. The businesses range from a New York wine and spirits importer to a Virginia-based maker of educational kits and musical instruments. The lawsuit challenges Trump's April 2nd Liberation Day tariffs as well as duties he separately levied against China. The Trump administration faces a similar lawsuit in Florida federal court as well, where a small business owner has asked a judge to block tariffs imposed on China. Trump imposed 10% tariffs on goods from all countries and higher tariffs for countries the administration says have high barriers to U.S. imports, most of which he later paused for 90 days. The American technology giant AMD announced on Tuesday that the company is set to begin chip production at the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's new Arizona facility, marking a significant step in expanding U.S.-based AI server manufacturing.
Well, I think overall, we all see that it's a very dynamic situation right now in the overall supply chain. I think we're very lucky that we have a broad and a very deep set of partnerships. So we believe we can work very closely with our partners to manage any of the supply chain issues.
Now, China has ordered its airlines not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets on Tuesday. Beijing has also asked that Chinese carriers halt purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from U.S. companies. This comes in response to the U.S. decision to impose 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. Meanwhile, this move is expected to raise maintenance costs for the jets flying in the country. U.S. and China have been embroiled in a tariff war triggered by U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies. Shifting focus to West Asia now, a senior Hamas official has indicated that the group will likely respond to a new Israeli ceasefire proposal within 48 hours. The proposal, presented through mediators Egypt and Qatar, offers a 45-day ceasefire in exchange for the release of half of the remaining hostages held in Gaza and the entry of aid. Israel has also demanded disarmament of Hamas and all Palestinian armed factions in the Gaza Strip as a condition for a permanent end to the conflict. Earlier, Hamas informed the mediators that it was willing to agree to any proposal that includes a permanent ceasefire, a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the entry of aid. However, the group rejected any clauses that would see it forced to disarm, calling it a red line and non-negotiable. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed that it had eliminated the head of a Hamas Nukba force terror cell, Hamza Wael Mohammed Asafa, in Hamas's Deir el-Bala battalion 2 weeks ago. Israel Defense Forces said that Asafa participated in the October 7th attack as well as a hostage release ceremony in February. And on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Ukrainian forces hit Russia's Kursk region with dozens of drones, killing an elderly woman and injuring 9 people. The Russian Defense Ministry said that 109 drones were downed over the Kursk region overnight. A multi-story apartment building was damaged in result of the drone attack, with several flats catching fire. Authorities had issued a missile and drone attack alert and asked residents to move away from windows. The assault came as residents of the Ukrainian city of Sumy grieved the victims of one of the deadliest Russian attacks of the war. Kursk and other Russian regions on the border with Ukraine have been facing frequent air and land attack by Kiev forces. Russian President Vladimir Putin is open to a permanent peace deal with Ukraine, according to a top US envoy, signaling a potential breakthrough in the conflict that has lasted over 3 years. In a televised interview on Monday, US envoy Steve Witkoff said he envisions a peace agreement taking shape. He also said that 2 of Putin's senior advisors participated in what he described a compelling meeting, which included discussions on US-Russia business ties. Further, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that it was not easy to agree with the United States on the key parts of a possible peace deal to end the war in Ukraine, and that Russia would never again allow itself to depend economically on the West. US President Donald Trump, who says he wants to be remembered as a peacemaker, has repeatedly said that he wants to end the bloodbath of the 3-year conflict in Ukraine, though a deal has yet to be agreed. The Kremlin on Sunday said that it was too early to expect results from the restoration of more normal relations with Washington. Lavrov said that Russia's position had been set out clearly by President Vladimir Putin in June 2024, when Putin demanded Ukraine must officially drop its NATO ambitions and withdraw its troops from the entirety of the territory of 4 Ukrainian regions claimed by Russia. Now, despite current trade troubles, global business has been pretty strong over the past few years, even in Germany. The country might be in or near a recession, but at least stock markets are up, pointing to some companies performing very well. Now, they opened their books and we are learning about the salaries paid to the respective CEOs. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin now on the story. Lars, you've looked at that manager salary list. What can you tell us?
Thanks for having me. Well, first and foremost, I can tell you that top managers have once again been doing very well. Looking at the 40 companies listed in Germany's blue chip DAX index, their CEOs have seen their salaries and bonuses go up 10.4% in 2024 compared to the year before. That's after a relatively meager raise of just 2% the year before. Good news? Not so much, at least not if you're not yourself the person pocketing all that money. Here's the problem. The profit these 40 companies made has only gone up just about 1% on average, though, so that begs the question, why would salaries at the top rise 5 times stronger? And it's likely because the company's stock price plays into these calculations, and shares are up 19% for the DAX in 2024. So it does seem that CEO salaries are much more tied to the perception investors have of any given company than they are to the business that the company is really doing. And that is especially worrisome as regular salaries are not keeping up at all. The gap between average salaries and those at the top is widening again, and it's widening so drastically that around half of those DAX companies had to put their payment plans on the agenda to be discussed at upcoming shareholder meetings. That's as some companies are even planning to raise their previously agreed upon maximum payout limits. So one can see how they're expecting these top salaries to continue to rise, which a lot of investors don't like to see.
And Lars, are you seeing this kind of excess with the unreasonably high salaries across the board in Germany's DAX?
No, not at all. There are, in fact, some companies where salaries seem to be a lot more moderate. There are a few in the 2 to 3 million euro range. Now, obviously, that's a lot of money still, but we are talking about very successful companies with global business. There is one fact I stumbled over. Among those 40 DAX bosses, there are only 3 women, which all by itself is pitiful. And it also seems that they're not getting these excessive payouts. There's Belén Garijo of a pharmaceutical giant Merck. She made almost 7 million euros last year. And then there's women at the helm of Commerzbank and Daimler, and they're making a bit less even. But in fairness, they are also fairly new in those positions. But it's definitely another factor we should keep an eye on. There should likely be more women in top positions. And now that is the same, of course, for men and women. Top salaries should be tied to a company's performance and not to the stock market price.
Thanks, Lars. Lars Holte reporting from DW Berlin. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on the show. India's Minority Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju says Waqf Amendment Bill aims to provide justice to the needy people. And India's Hajj quota rises to 175,000 in 2025. All that and more on the other side.
This week on Defense Dynamic, India and the United States wrap up Exercise Tiger Trump 2025 on India's east coast. India successfully tests its long-range glide bomb Gaurav. Can this homegrown weapon redefine precision strike capability and send a strong message across the border? What are direct energy weapons? Why, after successful trial of DRDO's DEW, India is now in the exclusive club? And inside the Indian Air Forces, how the Wolf Pack strategy is transforming aerial warfare, coordination and lethal intent. Tune in this Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I am Tadvi Taneja. Singapore's President Tharman Shanmugaratnam dissolved the country's parliament on Tuesday. The Election Commission announced it will hold the next general election on May the 3rd, for which nomination will be filed on April 23rd. The vote will be the first electoral test for Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who succeeded longtime Premier Lee Hsien Loong as leader of the People's Action Party in May 2024. The ruling PAP, People's Action Party that is almost certain to dominate and win more seats as it has in every vote since independence in 1965. Vietnamese President Luong Quoc held a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Xi's last day of a trip to Hanoi. China and Vietnam signed 45 documents and agreements aiming to boost ties between the two neighboring countries amid tariff tensions with the United States. After a 2-day stop in Hanoi, Xi will continue his Southeast Asian trip by visiting Malaysia and Cambodia from Tuesday to Friday. Still in Asia, Japanese authorities on Tuesday said that they had issued a cease and desist order to US tech titan Google over an alleged violation of national antitrust laws. It is the first time the country has issued such an order to a global technology giant, Japanese media reported, and follows similar moves in Europe and the United States. Japan's Fair Trade Commission said that the problem is related to the implementation of search functions for Android smartphones in violation of the antitrust law. The Trade Commission accuses Google of imposing binding conditions on Android smartphone manufacturers in Japan since at least July 2020. Specifically, it says Google made sure its online app store, Google Play, would be installed as part of a package with its web browser search app, Chrome. You're watching DD India Live. Now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. In Nigeria, at least 51 people were killed in a brutal attack by gunmen that have been laid to rest in a mass grave. The violence unfolded in Zike and Kimakpa villages in Basa district. This comes just days after the National Emergency Agency reported 52 fatalities and nearly 2,000 displaced in a wave of deadly assaults. In Iraq's Karbala, lush palm tree fields are making a comeback. As part of a national push to revive agriculture, the number of palm trees across the country has seen significant growth. The initiative highlights the government's renewed focus on boosting agricultural productivity and driving economic development. Thousands of devotees and visitors gathered at the historic Salhesh Fulbari, a sacred grove nestled in the eastern Nepal, to witness the event marking the annual blooming of a mysterious garland-shaped flower. The rare bloom, growing high on a haram tree, is not just a botanical wonder, but a living symbol of one of Nepal's most cherished folk love stories. And the India Meteorological Department, IMD, on Tuesday forecasted above normal rainfall for the upcoming southwest monsoon season from June to September this year. India is expected to experience above average monsoon rains this year at 105% of the long period average. The IMD defines rainfall in the range of 105 to 110% of the long period average as above average. Meanwhile, the key climatic factors such as El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole are expected to remain neutral, creating a favorable environment for a strong monsoon.
This year, southwest monsoon seasonal rainfall from June to September over the country as a whole for this during this year is most likely to be above normal category. You know that above normal category is more than 104% of the long period average of the rainfall. Long period average rainfall is 87 centimeter. So this year, quantitatively, the seasonal rainfall over the country as a whole is likely to be 105% of long period average. Of course, with the model error of plus or minus 5%. This model error will go in the later stage, it will be less and less error as a progress. This year, the El Nino condition is neutral, and also the IOD condition at present over the Indian Ocean, and maybe whatever the climate model is telling also it is a neutral IOD. So both the things are neutral.
India's weather agency also issued a number of weather advisories for the country, highlighting a combination of severe heat waves and heavy rainfall in different regions. From April to June this year, the IMD predicts above normal temperatures in majority parts of the country. There will likely be severe heat waves in areas like Delhi, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and portions of Karnataka. By mid-April, Delhi is expected to see temperatures as high as 40 degrees Celsius, breaking previous year records. Meanwhile, contrasting the heatwave conditions, several states are under heavy rainfall and thunderstorm alerts. The IMD has predicted heavy rainfall in India's northeastern states, Odisha, Assam and Meghalaya for the next 4 days, which could lead to localized flooding and disruptions. Nepal has been under wet weather for the past 2 days, with light rain and thunderstorms across many areas of the Himalayan nation. Koshi Pradesh, Madhesh, Karnali and Sudar Paschim faced cloudy conditions. Hilly areas in Koshi, Gandaki and Karnali experienced light rain and thunderstorms. The Kathmandu Valley is also facing cloudy weather with heavy rain in some areas. Back in India, addressing a press conference in Kerala, Minister of Minority Affairs Kiran Rijiju said that Waqf Amendment Bill aims to provide justice to the needy people. Rijiju highlighted that this bill is not targeted to any particular community.
We must give justice to the thousands and thousands of people who have lost their rightful claim, their ownership on their particular lands. This is not related to or targeted to Muslim alone. There are some campaign going on to set a narrative that the central government is working against Muslim community. No. We are here to correct the mistakes done in the past and to provide justice to the needy people.
Now, the Government of India has prioritized facilitating the Hajj pilgrimage for Indian Muslims, and as a result of sustained efforts, India's Hajj quota has risen from 136,020 in 2014 to 175,025 in 2025, finalized by Saudi authorities annually. The Ministry of Minority Affairs, through the Hajj Committee of India, has completed the necessary preparations, including flights, transport, MENA camps, accommodation and services as per Saudi Arabian guidelines. The remaining quota has been allotted as customary to private tour operators. Over 800 operators have been consolidated into 26 combined Hajj group operators, with the quota distributed to them in advance. So that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can also download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates from India and the world. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.